What is going on, ProGuides family? My name is Matt, and today we're going to be bringing you the newest patch notes coming to Valorant. Today is the release of patch 1.11, and with it the newest agent coming to Valorant's roster, SKYE. Alongside her though are some more interesting agent changes, so be sure to check out our tier list later in the video to see how these changes stack up. Today's question of the day is, how are you liking Act 3 so far? We are now just 2 weeks into the act and a lot has changed from the previous one. Personally, I'm really liking the new changes to competitive as well as some of the overall tweaks. If you agree or disagree, please let us know in the comments down below what you think of Act 3. Alright, enough with the talking, let's get started with some of the quality of life changes made around in this patch. Starting off today, Riot has changed quite a bit. We've finally gotten the left-handed view model for Valorant, so if you are left-handed or just someone who enjoys changing using different view model settings, then this is the setting for you. We've also got a nice change for all of the competitive players out there. During custom matches, you will now be able to play out all of the rounds in a game even if one team has technically won already. This is to allow full teams and players to extend their games to get that extra practice in against their training partners. I'm a pretty big fan of this change, as anything allowing players to practice easier is good in my book. To wrap things up, there were a few smaller changes that Riot made this patch. You can now send a direct message by clicking on a friend's name rather than having to always type it out, and some observer settings have also been added, including allowing observers to see players' keybinds. This might allow tournament organisers another level of info for the game, which can only mean a higher production value, so it's always good to see Riot updating their observer tools. Now, what I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting for. Yes, SKYE has finally arrived with this patch. She will become playable later today, and you'll even be able to pick her in competitive. As it stands right now, SKYE seems pretty powerful, but as always, there needs to be a few weeks of playtesting and community development before an agent can truly be called powerful or not. So we are just looking at first impressions today. That being said, we will be developing a SKYE guide over the coming days, so be on the lookout for that. You can check out SKYE's first impression ranking in the tier list right after we take you guys through some of the newest economical changes that will be coming to Valorant in patch 1.11. Alright everyone, as I'm sure you know by now, today is the day that Icebox finally enters the ranked rotation. With the addition of Icebox, we are now up to 5 maps in the competitive queue, which should hopefully help with some of the staleness that comes with having such a few number of maps. Icebox will be used in official tournaments such as First Strike after 4 weeks in the competitive queue. This is another cooling off period to allow people to develop strategies and counter strategies so that tournaments aren't ruined because of a new map. Riot has also once again taken a crack at trying to reduce queue times for high-ranked players. They claim to have reduced the queue time for unrated matches, but I guess we'll just have to pay attention to Tenzi's Twitter to see if he gets any more 12-hour queues. Lastly, Riot have also adjusted the combat score to include non-damaging assists, so we're assuming things like certain abilities or utility will count towards this. Riot hasn't given us a list of things that adjust your combat score, so we'll just have to do a bit more digging. For our last set of changes today, let's go over some of the most interesting changes that Riot has made to the economy. Firstly, attackers who lose but survive the entire round without planting the spike receive a reduced number of credits, 1,000. Riot has stated that with these economic changes, they're hoping to make saving gear versus going for a round win a bit of a hard decision, and punishing survivors attacking for not trying to get the spike down could definitely do that. Defenders who lose but survive the entire round after the spike has detonated also receive reduced credits, 1,000. It's a change similar to the first one, but potentially costing defenders 1,000 credits for not attempting to defuse, and this could definitely get more people to try and go for a clutch. I've seen a lot of people be in a 3v5 and they won't even attempt to retake the site, so this seems to be trying to counter that. Lastly, Riot made it so that dying to the spike no longer counts as a death in your KDA statistics, so you can still brag to your friends that your KD is slightly better than theirs. And now it's time for what you've all been waiting for, this patch's tier list. Starting things off today, we once again meet OMEN, an agent who has been performing well of late. He hasn't received any changes in this patch. His paranoia is still great, his smokes are still useful, and the rest of the controller agents seem underpowered, so OMEN is able to thrive. We think that OMEN is in a pretty good spot right now, but I can't wait to see what Riot does to help the other controller agents reach up to his heights. Next up we have CYPHER, an agent that has received some pretty interesting changes this patch. Now when CYPHER dies, his tripwires and camera are revealed and disabled. This isn't as big of a deal for spy camera, as it couldn't work when CYPHER was dead anyway, but having tripwires be useless if CYPHER isn't alive is a pretty big change. This now forces CYPHER players to play more like a sentinel, as they can't just recklessly take fights anymore if you want your trapwires to still be effective. However, this will definitely add some counterplay against a kit that felt like it had very few weaknesses, even when CYPHER was dead. Be on the lookout for how CYPHERs are adapting to this new change in your game, and see how they're adapting their trapwire placement or their position. As we move on to the next agent, we have none other than JETT. JETT has of course been performing well over the past few patches, and she seems to have settled at the top of the tier list. With the amount of mobility available to her on her tailwind and updraft, and her utility with her cloudburst, she is able to still own the skies and the ground. We can't wait to see more JETT players coming up in the First Strike series, so be sure to tune in. Finally for the S tier today, we have Breach. Another agent which we have seen at the top of the charts for a while, Riot actually decided to hit Breach with a buff today. Breach's flashpoint now blinds enemies for an extra 0.25 seconds, shifting from 1.75 seconds of blind time to 2 seconds. It seems that Riot really wants us all to be eternally blinded, as with the addition of SKYE there are now 2 agents with 3 flashes, and they are both initiators. The reason we have moved Breach down a bit on the tier list though has to do with the release of SKYE. Since she works with a slightly less impactful Breach, she is definitely going to steal some of the player base as well as playtime from Breach, as well as SKYE bringing healing to the table. It's going to be interesting to see how Breach handles these changes, but in the meantime, he is still in our S tier. As we begin our A tier, we find Phoenix. Once again, another agent who has been performing well of late. Phoenix has nothing to complain about. He is still the go-to agent if you want to take a site. Phoenix offers a lot of useful utility with his curveball and area of denial on his blaze and hot hands. If you are looking for someone to get you into sight, then look no further. Next up in the A tier is SOVA. With the addition of SKYE this patch, there are now a few more agents in the Initiator class. With that, it's going to be interesting to see how SOVA will be able to adapt to this newish addition. That being said, SOVA is still going strong, with recon arrows still being effective at revealing enemies, and shock arrows still tilting me in solo queue. It is safe to say that SOVA has earned his spot at the top of our A tier. Oh yes, the new addition to Valorant's roster is finally here. SKYE joins the fight today, along with her many useful abilities. As it stands right now, there are still quite a few things to work out with this agent, but she definitely feels strong in a team environment. As it stands, it can be difficult for SKYE to secure frags on her own due to her limited mobility. While yes, she does have access to a predator, that does not actually allow her to reposition, as she'll only control the predator during the ability's activation time. Until something overly broken gets discovered on her, we think she's earned her spot at the bottom of the A tier. As we finish off our A tier, we find RAZE. RAZE has had some trouble over the last couple of patches after some back-to-back nerfs, but it does seem that she's doing better. Where RAZE now lacks in utility, she still more than makes up for in killing power and useful teamplay potential. Using blast packs and paint shells to force enemies out of corners and into your teammates' line of fire is still a very effective strategy. Well. It looks like Riot decided to grab their tools and has gone to work once more. KILLJOY has received a variety of changes this patch, some for the better, some for the worse. Let's start it off with her new deactivation range. Previously, KILLJOY was able to leave her alarm button turret anywhere, then lurk around the map while they stayed activated. Now, KILLJOY has to be within 40 meters of both her turret and alarm bot to keep them active. If she leaves this range then re-enters it, she will reactivate her abilities. Next, her turret's cooldown after pickup was reduced from 20 seconds to only 10. Alarmbot got a similar treatment, with its cooldown after picking up reducing from 20 seconds to 7, and also a small buff to its stealth, reducing the range at which it can be detected from 9 meters to 7 meters. Lastly, her Nano Swarm has received some changes as well. The range at which Nano Swarm could be detected was decreased from 5 meters to 3.5 meters, with the damage increased from 40 per second to 45 per second. The damage now ticks smoother and faster though, instead of chunks of 10 damage every quarter of a second. All around, it seems that Riot's goal was to reduce her presence when she isn't actually holding down a sight, and on paper, this seems to accomplish that. Only time will tell how KILLJOY adapts to these changes, but I'm excited to see if she improves or drops in win rate after them. Anyways, as we move on, we cement KILLJOY at the top of our B tier. Next up, we meet an old great, Sage, in the middle of the B tier. It has certainly been a rough few months for Sage, going from the top of our tier list to now close to the bottom. As Riot removed a lot of her former utility and stalling power, she's fallen into a bit of a slump. With Barrier Orb being able to be bursted down by the enemy team and Slow Orb not being as large or effective anymore, Sage has just become less useful than some other agents. We hope to see Sage get some love soon, but for now, she'll remain in the B tier. Coming to the end of our B tier, we once again meet Brimstone. An agent that used to be revered as one of the best in the game has been feeling the pain of late. With OMEN performing well and only minor buffs coming to his kit, Brimstone has felt a bit underpowered. His 3 smokes are admittedly still amazing, and his stim beacon is still useful at giving you a nice advantage on a gunfight, but none of it seems to be really enough. Brimstone isn't unplayable by any means, but is definitely lacking in power and stall. For the time being, he'll have to make do in our B tier. And as we come to close out our B tier, we meet REYNA, another agent who was predicted to do great things but simply couldn't compete. In solo queue, it can be a coin flip to whether or not REYNA will be effective, but she is definitely more effective at higher elo. Either way, she's still affected by the same issues of unreliability. If you can't secure kills as REYNA, then it becomes very hard to play her effectively, as she suffers from a lack of utility or escape without her dismiss. That means we'll be leaving REYNA at the bottom of our B tier. As we turn to the last agent in our list for today, can you guess who it is? Yep, once again, we find Viper. An agent who just can't seem to get a break, Viper has been struggling with the very same issues for a while now. Namely, her very punishing gameplay and difficulty of use prevents a good player base from developing around her. We hope to see Riot bringing Viper some love in the coming patches, but until that happens, she's gonna have to remain in our C tier. Well everyone, unfortunately, that is all we have for you today. If you liked the video, then be sure to drop a like and maybe even subscribe. We put out a new video every day, with a patch notes video like this one dropping every single patch. If you are looking to learn more about Valorant, then be sure to check out ProGuides.com for some amazing coaches and our new VOD review system. With that, good luck, stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next one.